They laughed the moment she unzipped the rifle case. The weapon inside looked like it belonged in a war museum, its stock weathered, its old scope showing scratches from years of use. Nothing about it screamed high-tech or modern, nothing like the sleek gear their SEAL team prided itself on. "Is that thing even operational?" one sniper sneered, smirking. "Does it even hold zero, or are we about to watch her miss every shot?" Another added, his tone dripping with mockery. She said nothing. Her silence cut sharper than any comeback. Calmly, she laid the rifle on the ground, adjusting the bipod, and scanned the horizon as if their taunts didn't exist. The team exchanged amused glances, but then the radio crackled. Movement spotted. 2 meters out. Extreme crosswind. Heat distortions brutal. Shots nearly impossible. No one moved. No one even considered taking that shot, except her. She settled behind the scope, her breath steadying, the world narrowing down to a single point. One slow inhale, one steady squeeze. The crack of the shot echoed across the range. A single confirmed hit. Silence. The laughter was gone, swallowed by the weight of what they had just seen. What they didn't know was this. Morgan Kane had made shots like that before, just never in places where anyone lived long enough to tell the story. From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If you enjoyed this story, consider subscribing for more tales of unsung heroes and hidden legends. The helicopter broke through thin mountain air, rotors whipping the dust into violent spirals that rolled across the remote forward, operating base in northern Afghanistan. The air here was thinner, sharper, biting with the scent of sand and fuel. When the skids touched the gravel, every soldier near the landing zone stopped what they were doing. The figure who stepped out wasn't what anyone expected. Morgan Kane emerged with a battered rifle case over one shoulder and a compact rucksack over the other. She was mid-30s, average build. Nothing about her physique spoke of brute force or intimidation, but those who looked closely noticed the faint scars trailing across her left temple, like old lightning burns fading into her dark hair. Colonel Grant Mercer greeted her with a firm nod, his voice carrying both respect and caution. "Glad you made it. Honestly, I wasn't sure you'd come. Not after Kandahar." "That's behind us now," she replied in a tone that was flat, calm, and final. From the command tent, the sniper team watched the scene unfold. They didn't bother hiding their doubt. Jack Rourke, the team's lead sniper, crossed his arms and muttered, "That's our secret weapon. She looks like my old librarian." Kyle Maddox, his spotter, smirked. "Maybe she's here to hand out manuals on how to shoot better." Morgan heard every word. She was meant to. Their voices weren't whispers. They wanted her to hear the doubt. But she didn't respond. Instead, she continued methodically unpacking her gear, each motion deliberate, unhurried. The rifle she slid out of its case looked like it belonged in another lifetime. Its wooden stock had been worn smooth, not from neglect, but from countless hours in the field. The barrel lacked the sleek fluting of the precision. Rifles lined up on the team's racks, and the scope, scratched, faded, utilitarian, seemed like it had been pulled straight from a different era. Jack Rourke couldn't hold back his smirk. He strolled over, his boots crunching on the gravel, his expression polite but laced with sarcasm. "Interesting piece of equipment you've brought," he said, giving the rifle a slow, almost mocking glance. "Macmillan TAC-50, that's old school. And that scope? Looks like something my grandfather might have used in Vietnam." Morgan didn't rise to the bait. She continued assembling her rifle with calm, practiced precision, her hands moving like clockwork. Ethan Cole, the team's tech specialist, wandered over, holding his own state-of-the-art rifle like a badge of superiority. "Does that thing even hold zero out here? Our Mars boys are running the new Barrett MRAD with digital wind mapping. I mean, please tell me you've at least got the ballistic calculator app." Morgan's response was as quiet as it was cutting. She reached into her pack and pulled out a battered leather-bound notebook. Its pages were filled with dog-eared corners, faded ink, and handwritten. Ballistic tables that looked like they had been perfected over a lifetime. The laughter that followed was sharp, too loud, the kind of laughter that filled a room when people weren't sure if they were actually right. From the edge of the tent, Colonel Grant Mercer's eyes narrowed. He stepped forward, his tone low and firm. "Enough." The room fell silent. He turned to Morgan. "Walk with me." They stepped just outside the command tent, where the dust and heat made every breath heavy. Mercer lowered his voice. "These men are the best we've got, but they don't know what I know about you." "Are you sure you're ready for this?" "After Kandahar." Morgan cut him off, her voice calm but edged with steel. I'm here, aren't I? Let's focus on the mission. Morgan heard every word. She was meant to. Their voices weren't whispers. They wanted her to hear the doubt. But she didn't respond. Instead, she continued methodically unpacking her gear, each motion deliberate, unhurried. The rifle she slid out of its case looked like it belonged in another lifetime. Its wooden stock had been worn smooth, not from neglect, but from countless hours in the field. The barrel lacked the sleek fluting of the precision. Rifles lined up on the team's racks, and the scope, scratched, faded, utilitarian, seemed like it had been pulled straight from a different era. Jack Rourke couldn't hold back his smirk. He strolled over, his boots crunching on the gravel, his expression polite but laced with sarcasm. "Interesting piece of equipment you've brought," he said, giving the rifle a slow, almost mocking glance. "Macmillan TAC 50, that's old school. And that scope? Looks like something my grandfather might have used in Vietnam." Morgan didn't rise to the bait. She continued assembling her rifle with calm, practiced precision, her hands moving like clockwork. Ethan Cole, the team's tech specialist, wandered over, holding his own state-of-the-art rifle like a badge of superiority. "Does that thing even hold zero out here? Our Mars boys are running the new Barrett MRAD with digital wind mapping. I mean, please tell me you've at least got the ballistic calculator app." Morgan's response was as quiet as it was cutting. She reached into her pack and pulled out a battered leather-bound notebook. Its pages were filled with dog-eared corners, faded ink, and handwritten. Ballistic tables that looked like they had been perfected over a lifetime. The laughter that followed was sharp, too loud, the kind of laughter that filled a room when people weren't sure if they were actually right. From the edge of the tent, Colonel Grant Mercer's eyes narrowed. He stepped forward, his tone low and firm. "Enough." The room fell silent. He turned to Morgan. "Walk with me." They stepped just outside the command tent, where the dust and heat made every breath heavy. Mercer lowered his voice. "These men are the best we've got, but they don't know what I know about you." "Are you sure you're ready for this?" "After Kandahar." Morgan cut him off, her voice calm but edged with steel. "I'm here, aren't I? Let's focus on the mission. The shot will be approximately 2,600 meters." Colonel Grant Mercer said, his finger tracing the map laid out across the briefing table. "Wind conditions will be unpredictable and harsh." "Impossible, you mean?" Jack Rourke cut in, leaning forward with a skeptical smirk. "With all due respect, sir, at that distance, given these crosswinds and the heat, distortion rolling through that valley, we're talking lottery odds. A 1 in a million shot." Mercer didn't flinch. Instead, his eyes shifted to Morgan Kane, who stood quietly at the edge of the tent, her battered rifle resting against her leg. "That's why she's here," he said simply. The silence that followed was thick enough to cut through. Then Kyle Maddox let out an incredulous laugh. "You're kidding, right? With that antique? What's she gonna do, scare them with nostalgia?" Morgan didn't bother answering. She simply closed her leather-bound notebook, the thud echoing louder than words. "We should move into position," she said evenly. "First light gives us the best visibility before the valley heat distorts the shot." The team shuffled to gather their gear, some still snickering under their breath. Ethan Cole sidled up to Rourke as they checked their optics. $10 says she's off by 100 meters. "You're on," Rourke replied with a grin. "I'm calling 200. The rocky outcrop overlooking the valley was unforgiving terrain, jagged stone, loose shale, and the thin, biting air of high altitude. But it provided a perfect vantage point of the enemy compound, sitting like a shadow 2,600 meters away. As the first slivers of dawn crept over the mountains, the world turned to liquid gold, the shadows stretching long across the desert floor. The team spread out, setting up their rifles and calibrating their gear with precision born of habit. Morgan, however, chose her position slightly apart from the rest. Her setup was quiet, unhurried, and deliberate. She laid out her tools, handmade instruments worn smooth from years of use, her dog-eared notebook filled with handwritten calculations, and ammunition that bore no manufacturer markings, each round looking like it had been crafted for a singular purpose. Kyle Maddox made it clear he wasn't about to spot for her. "No offense, but I work with Rourke. We've been a team for 4 years. "None taken," Morgan Kane replied evenly. The first words most of them had heard her speak since arriving. Her voice was calm, almost too calm, like she wasn't fazed by their doubt. Ethan Cole was busy setting up his advanced targeting system, a sleek tablet-like device mounted to his rifle. It calculated everything: wind speed, temperature, humidity, barometric pressure. even spin drift and the Coriolis effect, with AI-assisted precision. "Check this out," he called to the others, holding the screen up like a trophy. "This thing factors in bullet drop, spin drift, Coriolis, everything. Basically, it does all the thinking for you." Morgan didn't even glance his way. She was making quiet notes in her worn leather notebook, the pages filled with strange symbols and notations that looked nothing like the clean digital charts they were used to. Rourke raised an eyebrow. "What kind of system is that?" She didn't look up. "Mine," she said simply, closing the notebook as if that ended the conversation. The radio crackled suddenly, breaking the tension. "Eagle Eye, this is Nest. Target expected on site within the hour." "Confirm your position." "Confirmed," Colonel Mercer replied into his headset. "All elements ready." Rourke settled behind his rifle, a sleek, state-of-the-art weapon with a carbon fiber stock, a fluted barrel, and a digital scope that displayed environmental readings directly in the viewfinder. "Nice setup," Morgan commented. The first time she'd offered words that weren't in defense of herself. Surprised, Rourke gave a small nod. "Yeah, $35,000 worth of precision engineering." Morgan tilted her head slightly. "What's your glass?" "Modified," Rourke said with a grin. "I bet you don't even have a rangefinder." She gave no answer, just kept adjusting her scope with steady hands. The minutes stretched into an hour. The rising sun turned the valley into a shimmering furnace. Heat distortion danced like ghosts across the barren ground, warping every distant shape. The wind picked up, unpredictable gusts sending dust devils spiraling into the air, as if the entire landscape was daring them to take the shot. "Movement!" Ethan Cole's voice cut through the static, sharp and urgent. His eyes were locked on the thermal imaging screen. Southeast corner of the compound. Instantly, the team shifted, rifles snapping into position. Through their scopes, they caught a glimpse, a figure stepping briefly into the pale light before vanishing back into the maze of shadows. "That's him," Colonel Grant Mercer confirmed, his tone tight. "Intelligence confirms the target's heat signature. It's our man." Jack Rourke exhaled slowly, settling deeper into his firing position. Kyle Maddox called out the data like a machine. "Wind at 1823 mpr, variable direction. Barometric pressure is dropping fast." Ethan's gaze flicked back to his targeting tablet. His brow furrowed as a bright red indicator flashed across the screen. 91% probability of miss. The target appeared again, darting between two structures moving fast. "Take the shot," Mercer ordered. Rourke hesitated, his finger hovering just above the trigger. "Sir, with these crosswinds, I don't have a clean solution. The heat distortion is... it's a gamble." Seconds slipped away. The figure was already moving toward a waiting vehicle. Once he reached it, they'd lose him. Maybe forever. Mercer's voice came over the comms, sharper now. "We're losing our window. Does anyone have the shot?" There was a beat of silence, then Morgan Kane's voice, calm and low. "I have it." She shifted smoothly into position, her movements unhurried yet precise, as if she'd done this 1,000 times. The team broke into sudden, incredulous laughter. "Her, with that antique?" Someone muttered between chuckles. "Enough!" Mercer's voice cracked like a whip, silencing them. "Let her take it." A heavy stillness settled over the rocky outcrop as Morgan Kane positioned herself behind her rifle. The wind hissed softly across the ridge, carrying the dry scent of dust and iron. Without a spotter, she flipped open her battered leather notebook, scanning the handwritten tables with eyes that didn't waver. Her fingers adjusted the scope with small, exact movements, 1 click for elevation, 2 for windage. Then she closed her eyes just for a moment, as if shutting out the world. She inhaled deeply, held it, then exhaled halfway and pressed the trigger. With the kind of control that only came from years of repetition, the shot cracked like thunder, its echo rolling across the valley. For 2 long seconds, there was nothing, only the shimmer of heat waves distorting the compound below. Then, as if reality caught up with time, the distant figure dropped like a puppet whose strings had been cut. The radio hissed to life. "Target eliminated." "Clean shot." Kyle Maddox slowly lowered his spotting scope, his face pale. "That's not possible." Ethan Cole stared down at his targeting tablet, frozen. "My system showed a 91% probability of a miss. The variables were all over the place. That shouldn't have happened." Jack Rourke didn't say a word. His usual sarcasm was gone, replaced by something colder, curiosity mixed with respect. He walked over to Morgan's position, crouching beside her rifle. His trained eye began to notice the things he had missed before, the custom trigger work. The hand-lapped barrel polished with precision, and the strange proprietary glass in the scope, etched with markings he didn't recognize. "What is this?" he asked quietly, pointing to the odd symbols carved along the barrel. Morgan didn't have a chance to answer. A new voice crackled over a separate frequency, coming from her personal radio, a channel none of them had been given. Blackwood confirmed status. The entire team froze, exchanging confused glances. Blackwood wasn't the call sign they'd been briefed on. Morgan keyed the mic without hesitation. "Stillwater asset confirms package delivered. Site secure, no complications." The change in Colonel Grant Mercer's demeanor was instant and unmistakable. The casual confidence he carried with the team moments ago was gone, replaced by something closer to deference and even respect. "Sir?" Jack Rourke asked, confusion written across his face. He had never seen Mercer look at anyone like this. Mercer's gaze shifted to Morgan Kane, who gave him an almost imperceptible nod as if granting permission. "Gentlemen," Mercer said, his tone low and deliberate, "you've been shooting alongside the legendary ghost of Kandahar." The words seemed to freeze the air. The team stared at her, as if waiting for the punchline that never came. That's not possible," Kyle Maddox stammered. "The ghost was just a story, a myth. The sniper with the longest confirmed kill in Afghanistan. Those insane shots in Mosul and everywhere else. That's not her. 12 confirmed kills," Mercer continued, his voice steady, "all beyond standard operational parameters. All with the same rifle you just called a museum relic." Ethan Cole shook his head, disbelief etched into his features. "But those kills were credited to different snipers from different units. It can't all be one person." Morgan spoke for the first time, her voice quiet but unshakable. "There's every way." She began breaking down her rifle, her hands moving with practiced ease. "When operations don't officially exist, neither do their snipers." As she worked, images flickered in her mind. The moonless night in Kandahar. The single shot that had turned the tide of a classified mission. The fallout that cost lives and forced her into the shadows. Her rifle wasn't outdated. It was purpose-built, using classified modifications disguised beneath the appearance of something ordinary, untraceable, forgettable. "Your rifle," Rourke said slowly, realization dawning. "It looks like junk on purpose." Morgan nodded once. "The best weapons are the ones no one remembers seeing." The radio crackled sharply, cutting through the tense silence. "Eagle Eye, new intelligence incoming. 3 additional HVTs have arrived at the secondary location, requesting overwatch and possible engagement." Mercer's jaw tightened. He looked to his team, then back at Morgan. "This wasn't part of the brief. These conditions are getting worse," Jack Rourke muttered. His eyes fixed on the valley where the rising heat created rippling waves that warped the landscape. "I don't think even she can pull off these shots." Morgan Kane studied the new set of coordinates silently, flipping open her weathered leather notebook. Her gaze was calm, unflinching, as she traced the numbers with a gloved finger. "I can take the first one," she said finally. "Maybe the second. But the third?" She looked directly at Rourke. "That one's yours." Rourke let out a short, humorless laugh. "Mine? I just watched you make a shot I wouldn't attempt on my best day." "Because you don't know what I know," Morgan replied evenly, her tone carrying neither arrogance nor doubt, just fact. Kyle Maddox approached next, his earlier bravado stripped away. There was a note of curiosity in his voice now, almost humility. "Would you show me your calculations?" Morgan hesitated for a moment, as if weighing whether to share what few ever got to see. Then she nodded. Slowly, she opened the leather-bound notebook, revealing pages filled with intricate hand-drawn formulas, dense notations, and carefully marked observations. Ethan Cole, peering over Maddox's shoulder, frowned. "That's not standard military ballistics. I've never seen half these equations." Morgan pointed to one section, her finger gliding over a string of numbers and symbols. "These account for atmospheric density changes during the bullet's entire flight path," she explained quietly. "Not just wind or temperature, everything. The round will experience before it reaches its target. And these," Morgan Kane continued, tapping another column of figures in her notebook, "compensate for micro-terrain effects on wind patterns." Jack Rourke had been standing a few feet away, his pride warring with his curiosity. Finally, he stepped forward, shoulders tense but voice steady. "I've been chasing shots like that for 3 years. I can't break 2,100 meters with any consistency." Morgan's hand moved slowly across the rifle's worn wooden stock, her tone calm and measured. It's not about the equipment, she said. At extreme distances, you're not just shooting through air. You're navigating a river, a constantly shifting invisible current. You have to feel it, predict it, and trust it. Ethan Cole crouched beside her rifle, studying the scope with a new respect. These markings, they're custom? Morgan nodded once. Hand-etched calibrations. Thousands of test shots. Thousands of hours. No app, no AI, no algorithm can replace experience. By the time they regrouped for the next engagement, the dynamic had shifted entirely. The mockery that had greeted her arrival was gone, replaced with quiet attention and something closer to respect. First target, 2,430 meters, Colonel Grant Mercer announced. Wind conditions are rough, maybe worse than before. Morgan set up her rifle, methodically adjusting her scope. She took the shot. Seconds later, the radio crackled. Target down! For the second target at 2,500 meters, she didn't just fire, she walked them through her process. Watch the heat mirage. Count the rhythm of the wind, not just the gusts. Feel how the air is moving through the valley, she murmured. Kyle Maddox was now spotting for her, hanging on every word like a student who had finally met the teacher he didn't know he needed. The confirmation came again. Target eliminated. Then came the third target, the hardest of all. It was partially hidden behind a crumbling wall, sitting at an upward angle that threw off conventional ballistic solutions. Morgan looked at Rourke. This one's yours. He hesitated, jaw tight. I can't make that shot. Morgan's eyes met his. Not with what you knew an hour ago, she said. But now, she slid into the role of spotter, kneeling beside him, guiding every adjustment. Watch the dust at the far ridge, she instructed. See how it shifts differently near the ground? That's a low wind layer pushing left. Up here it's pulling right. Trust your eye more than your gear. Feel the shot before you take it. Jack Rourke steadied his breathing. Every adjustment guided by the lessons Morgan Kane had just shown him. He aligned his crosshairs, the world narrowing down to a single breath, a single heartbeat. When he finally squeezed the trigger, the shot cracked across the valley and time seemed to hold still. 1 second, 2, 3. The radio came alive. Target down! Clean shot. The look on Rourke's face wasn't just pride, it was something deeper. Revelation. That's the furthest I've ever connected, he said quietly, almost in disbelief. Morgan gave a single nod. The first of many. As the team began packing up their gear, the floodgates opened. Questions came quickly, now driven by curiosity rather than mockery. How did you become the ghost? Ethan Cole asked, no longer hiding the admiration in his tone. Morgan didn't look up, her hands moving with their usual quiet precision as she disassembled her rifle piece by piece. I never set out to become anything, she said evenly. I was a competitive shooter. I got recruited for my accuracy. Then came specialized training, classified operations. The legend. It just grew on its own. Kyle Maddox leaned forward, his voice softer than usual. But why all the secrecy? With skills like yours, you could have written your own ticket anywhere. For the briefest moment, a shadow crossed Morgan's face. Legends are useful tools, she said. The ghost was more valuable as a rumor than as a person. Rourke's voice cut through the silence, low and careful. Kandahar, he said. What happened there? Morgan's hands froze on the rifle. She didn't answer immediately. Colonel Grant Mercer shot Rourke a warning glance, but Morgan gave a faint nod, granting permission to continue. Her voice was steady, but her eyes seemed to be somewhere far away. It was supposed to be a simple operation, she began. One high-value target, a gathering of insurgent leaders. Clean, precise, one shot. She closed her rifle case with deliberate care, the sound punctuating her words like a gavel. But the intelligence was wrong. The building was full of civilians. I saw it through my scope. I tried to abort, but our comms were compromised. Someone else gave the fire order, claiming it came from me. The air around them grew heavy, as if the mountain itself held its breath. No one spoke. The weight of her words settled over the team, replacing the dry wind with an uncomfortable silence that no one dared break. The landscape, the weather, the time of day. Even the season, Morgan Kane said, her voice steady but carrying the weight of experience. Everything matters when you're shooting at extreme distances. Jack Rourke nodded slowly, her words sinking in deeper than he expected. I want to learn, he admitted. Not just the techniques, but the way you think. Morgan's eyes narrowed slightly. Why? Rourke didn't hesitate. Because today I realized that everything I thought I knew about being the best was wrong. And I don't want to stay wrong. For the first time since she'd joined the team, Morgan smiled, a small, genuine expression that softened the sharp lines of her face and made her look entirely different. "We start at dawn," she said simply. "Bring your rifle. Leave your ego in the barracks." The next morning, the mountains were painted in shades of gold and violet, the rising sun cutting through the mist like a blade. Jack arrived to find Morgan already there on a high ridge, her rifle fully assembled but not aimed, her leather-bound notebook spread open on a flat rock, its pages fluttering gently in the early breeze. "First lesson," she said without preamble, her voice carrying in the quiet air. "Put away your scope. Tell me what you see." Jack scanned the valley below, jagged mountains fading into haze, a few scattered structures, vehicles crawling along a dirt road to the east, mountains, buildings, a convoy heading toward— "Look deeper," Morgan interrupted, her tone patient but firm. "What is the valley telling you?" Jack frowned, narrowing his eyes. He tried to push past the obvious. "The dust near that ridgeline, it's moving differently than everywhere else. And there's a heat signature rising from that cluster of buildings. Maybe a generator?" Morgan gave a faint nod. "Good, now close your eyes. Feel the air on your face. What's it telling you?" Jack obeyed, letting his breath steady as he felt the subtle brush of the morning wind against his skin. "From the west," he said slowly, "but it's not steady, it's swirling." The next morning, the mountains were painted in shades of gold and violet, the rising sun cutting through the mist like a blade. Jack arrived to find Morgan already there on a high ridge, her rifle fully assembled but not aimed, her leather-bound notebook spread open on a flat rock, its pages fluttering gently in the early breeze. "First lesson," she said without preamble, her voice carrying in the quiet air. "Put away your scope. Tell me what you see." Jack scanned the valley below, jagged mountains fading into haze, a few scattered structures, vehicles crawling along a dirt road to the east, mountains, buildings, a convoy heading toward— "Look deeper," Morgan interrupted, her tone patient but firm. "What is the valley telling you?" Jack frowned, narrowing his eyes. He tried to push past the obvious. "The dust near that ridgeline, it's moving differently than everywhere else. And there's a heat signature rising from that cluster of buildings. Maybe a generator?" Morgan gave a faint nod. "Good, now close your eyes. Feel the air on your face. What's it telling you?" Jack obeyed, letting his breath steady as he felt the subtle brush of the morning wind against his skin. "From the west," he said slowly, "but it's not steady, it's swirling." As days turned into a week, Rourke's understanding deepened. He stopped relying solely on the digital readouts he once trusted and started reading the world around him. The dust, the sun, the rhythm of the valley. Soon the others took notice. Kyle Maddox joined them, then Ethan Cole, even leaving his beloved targeting system behind, preferring to learn how to trust his own instincts over the cold numbers of a screen. Morgan's lessons weren't just about shooting. They were about seeing. 1 week into the training, Colonel Grant Mercer arrived at their practice ridge. His face was drawn, his voice carrying a weight that silenced the group instantly. "We've got new intelligence," he said. "The bomb maker's network is still active. We've identified the new leader, but he's deep in the mountains. The approach is heavily monitored. Conventional forces can't get anywhere close." Morgan didn't hesitate. "What's the distance?" Mercer glanced at his notes. "Just over 3 kilometers. A low whistle escaped Kyle Maddox. "That's beyond even your range, isn't it?" Morgan's eyes narrowed, calculating. "Under normal circumstances, yes." A pause. "But I can tell this isn't a standard elimination mission, is it?" The colonel hesitated, then shook his head. "No, we need to make a statement. The shot needs to be witnessed," Morgan Kane said, her tone measured but cutting through the tension like a blade. "It needs to send a message that no distance can guarantee safety." Jack Rourke looked between Morgan and Colonel Grant Mercer, disbelief flickering across his face. "You're talking about an impossible shot," he said slowly. "One that's not only successful but seen. That's practically suicide for whoever takes it." "Not if there's more than one shooter," Morgan replied, her voice quiet but unwavering. Understanding dawned in Rourke's eyes. "A synchronized shot," he murmured. "Multiple rifles. Same target. Same instant." Morgan nodded. "Exactly. One impossible shot from multiple positions. If we hit from 3 angles at once, the probability of a successful impact increases dramatically. Kyle Maddox frowned, rubbing the back of his neck. But the coordination would have to be perfect. Wind conditions, angles, everything varies by position. Every shooter would need completely different adjustments. That's why I've been training you, Morgan said simply. Her gaze swept across the team. We don't need matching calculations. We need shooters who understand the variables at their specific location. Mercer's eyes narrowed slightly as he studied the group. Can it be done? Morgan's gaze lingered on each of them. Rourke, with his raw talent tempered by newfound humility. Maddox, with his sharp observational instincts. Ethan Cole, whose analytical mind had finally begun to balance precision with intuition. She drew in a breath. Yes, she said at last. But we'll need 3 days to prepare. Those 3 days became a study in absolute precision and trust. Morgan divided the team into 3 units, each positioned to create a triangulated kill zone around the target compound. Jack Rourke would take the western approach, where crosswinds were the most unpredictable. Kyle Maddox would claim the southern ridge, a vantage point with a tricky downward slope. Morgan Kane herself would occupy the eastern high ground, the most dangerous and exposed position. Ethan Cole would remain in a concealed command post, coordinating communications and streaming, real-time atmospheric and weather, data to all shooters. Each day began in the pre-dawn stillness, when the mountains were little more than dark, silhouettes against a bruised, purple sky. They mapped every ridge, every depression, every shifting air current. In the afternoons, they tested and fine-tuned custom ammunition Morgan had prepared, rounds that looked unremarkable but were meticulously hand-loaded for consistency at extreme ranges. On the final evening, as the sun bled into the horizon, Morgan delivered the last briefing. The key is synchronization, she said, her voice firm. We're not taking 3 shots. We're taking 1 shot, fired from 3 angles, as if from 1 rifle. Kyle Maddox glanced at the others, then voiced the question everyone had silently considered. And what if one of us misses? Morgan's response was calm but final. We won't. But if something feels off, we abort and reassess. There will be no second attempts. That's when mistakes happen. The morning of the operation, the world was still black when they began moving, cloaked in darkness and silence. The compound lay in the heart of an unforgiving valley, guarded by mountains that rose like jagged teeth against the fading stars. The target, the new bomb maker, now running the network, would appear for an outdoor demonstration of his latest device at precisely 900 hours. Jack Rourke crawled into his western hide, his rifle already coated with the cold dust of the mountains. Through his scope, the compound was barely visible, just a scattering of tiny structures, distorted by the early shimmer of heat. Eagle 1 in position, Rourke reported, his voice low and steady over comms, using the new call signs Morgan had assigned. The morning of the operation, the world was still black when they began moving, cloaked in darkness and silence. The compound lay in the heart of an unforgiving valley, guarded by mountains that rose like jagged teeth against the fading stars. The target, the new bomb maker, now running the network, would appear for an outdoor demonstration of his latest device at precisely 900 hours. Jack Rourke crawled into his western hide, his rifle already coated with the cold dust of the mountains. Through his scope, the compound was barely visible, just a scattering of tiny structures, distorted by the early shimmer of heat. Eagle 1 in position, Rourke reported, his voice low and steady over comms, using the new call signs Morgan had assigned. Eagle 2, ready? Came Kyle Maddox's calm voice over the radio from the southern ridge. Eagle 3, set. Morgan Kane confirmed from her exposed position on the eastern rise. Command acknowledges, Ethan Cole added from his coordination post, fingers moving across a rugged tablet. Weather data shows light, variable winds. Barometric pressure holding steady at 2992. Target expected on site in 30 minutes. Jack Rourke shifted his weight slightly, sinking deeper into his hide. He inhaled through his nose, held the breath, then let it out slowly, exactly as Morgan had taught him. Her words echoed in his mind. Read the landscape. Feel the air. Trust your instincts over your instruments. Through his scope, the compound below looked deceptively quiet. But he knew that would change soon. Movement at the compound, Maddox reported, his tone tight. Multiple individuals gathering in the central courtyard. Rourke adjusted his scope slightly, focusing on the cluster of figures now emerging from between the buildings. He watched them gather around what looked like a makeshift demonstration table. Target identified, Cole announced from command. Black vest, red head covering, Moving toward the center of the gathering, Jack found the target in his crosshairs, steadying his breathing as he ran through the mental checklist. Morgan had drilled into him. The distance was extreme, well beyond what he would have ever believed possible before meeting her. But now, her training and methods had rewired the way he approached every shot. Eagle 1 has visual and solution, he confirmed. Eagle 2 has visual and solution, Maddox echoed. A brief pause, then Morgan's voice cut in. Eagle 3 has visual and solution. On my mark! Cole's voice came over the net, precise and controlled. Synchronized fire in 30 seconds. Counting down 29. Hansi. The countdown began. Jack steadied his mind, shutting out everything except the alignment of his scope, the steady pressure on the trigger, and the rhythmic pace of his heart. He thought back to that first day at the range when he'd mocked Morgan's old rifle, calling it a relic. Back then, he hadn't understood. Now he did. True mastery wasn't about gear or tech. It was about perception, patience, clarity. 3, 2, 1, mark. Jack squeezed the trigger. The rifle kicked back, the recoil sharp but familiar. 3 shots cracked across the mountains, perfectly synchronized, blending into one thunderous note that rolled through the valley. For 4 seconds, nothing moved. Then through his scope, Jack saw the target collapse, sudden, final. The courtyard erupted into chaos as figures scattered, searching for a threat they would never see. Target down, Cole confirmed, his voice cutting through the comms. Clean hit. Extract immediately. The team broke down their positions with practiced precision, erasing every trace of their presence. Within minutes, they were on the move, following their predetermined exfiltration routes that would converge at a rendezvous point 5 kilometers away. Jack was the first to arrive, followed by Maddox. They waited in the brittle silence of the ridge, scanning for Morgan. After 15 tense minutes, Kyle spoke. She should be here by now. The radio crackled to life. Eagle 3 encountering resistance. Taking alternate route. Proceed with extraction. Jack grabbed the radio instantly. Negative, we wait. Negative, Morgan's voice replied, hard and final. Complete the mission. That's an order. The staccato sound of distant gunfire punctuated her words. Colonel Grant Mercer's voice suddenly cut in. Extraction helicopter inbound. 2 minutes. Jack and Kyle locked eyes, the decision unspoken but mutual. Both men shouldered their packs and started, moving toward Morgan's last known position. Eagle 1 and Eagle 2, return to the extraction point immediately, Mercer ordered. With respect, sir. No, Jack replied, his tone low but resolute. We don't leave our own behind. They moved fast, navigating the broken terrain with the very skills Morgan had drilled into them, reading shadows, watching wind shifts, moving silently between natural cover. The gunfire had stopped. That worried Jack far more than if it had continued. They crested the rocky ridge, their boots scraping against loose shale as they scanned the ravine below. Morgan Kane was pinned down behind a jagged boulder, her sidearm barking short, controlled bursts. 3 armed men were advancing on her position, using the uneven terrain for cover. Her rifle was nowhere in sight, likely dropped when the ambush hit. Jack Rourke and Kyle Maddox didn't hesitate. They dropped into prone positions, rifles shouldered, breathing steady. 2 clean shots cracked almost simultaneously. The first attacker crumpled instantly. The second fell mid-step. The third man spun in confusion, his weapon searching for the source of the fire. That split-second hesitation was all Morgan needed. She leaned out from cover and put a single round from her sidearm straight into his chest. Rourke and Maddox scrambled down the slope toward her, gravel sliding under their boots. A gash along Morgan's left arm was bleeding steadily, but she waved off their concern with a grimace. I told you to extract, she said, voice tight but steady. Yet her eyes betrayed a flicker of relief. We don't abandon our spotter, Maddox replied simply, reloading his rifle with practiced ease. 15 minutes later, the thrum of rotor blades echoed across the valley. The extraction helicopter skimmed over the ridge, its downdraft kicking up spirals of dust and grit. As the bird lifted them from the mountains, Morgan caught sight of enemy reinforcements, swarming into the compound below, too late to do anything but witness their failure. Back at base, the debrief was short and sharp. The mission was labeled a complete success. That synchronized shot, 3 rifles, 1 impossible target at over 3 kilometers, had not only eliminated a high-value figure but sent a chilling message. Across the entire network, no distance offers safety, and no shadow is deep enough to hide. Inside the medical tent, Morgan sat with quiet patience as a medic cleaned and bandaged her wound. Rourke and Maddox hovered nearby, still turning over the day's events in their minds. "Why did you come back for me?" she asked finally, her voice soft but edged. "You know that violated protocol." Maddox glanced at Rourke, who answered without hesitation. "Because that's what a team does," Rourke said, his voice steady. "And somewhere in the last week, we became one." Morgan's sharp eyes softened slightly. After a beat, she gave a single, slow nod. "Yes," she admitted quietly. "We did." Colonel Grant Mercer entered the tent, his face unreadable. "The shot is already becoming legend," he said, folding his arms. 3 kilometers, synchronized fire, 1 perfect hit. "Intelligence reports the network is in chaos." "Mission accomplished," Morgan replied. "Not quite," Mercer said with a thin edge in his tone. "There's still the matter of your original assignment." Rourke frowned, his jaw tightening. "Original assignment? Original assignment?" Jack Rourke asked, his tone sharp with confusion. Colonel Grant Mercer glanced at Morgan Kane, who exhaled slowly before giving a small nod of permission. "Morgan wasn't sent here just for this operation," Mercer explained. "She was sent to evaluate this team's potential, for something larger." "Larger?" Kyle Maddox leaned forward, suspicion in his eyes. "The Ghost program," Mercer said evenly. "It needs to be reactivated, but not the way it was before. No lone operators. This time we build teams. Specialists who can accomplish the impossible together." "And what's your assessment?" Maddox asked, turning his attention directly to Morgan. She looked at each of them in turn. Rourke, Maddox, Ethan Cole. "That you're ready," she said simply. "If you want it." "Want what exactly?" Rourke asked. "To become ghosts," Morgan replied. "To take on missions that don't officially exist. To make shots that aren't officially possible. To walk into places where no backup is coming. And walk out unseen. And disappear from the records," Ethan Cole said quietly, the realization settling on his face. "Like you did after Kandahar." Morgan nodded once. "It's not a decision to take lightly. There's no glory. No headlines, no medals. The work happens in shadows. But it matters." Rourke's gaze hardened. "It matters," he said. "More than most will ever know." 6 months later, high in the Nevada mountains, a remote training facility received 4 new instructors. There was no announcement, no ceremony. Their names did not appear on any roster, and no official record acknowledged their presence. Yet their impact was unmistakable. Whispers began to circulate, rumors that the ghost of Kandahar had returned. But now she wasn't alone. The whisper spoke of a team, capable of synchronized sniper fire from distances once thought impossible. Military officials dismissed these stories as exaggeration. Yet in certain quiet circles, they became a very real concern. Inside the main building of the facility, near the entrance, stood a glass case. Within it rested Morgan Kane's rifle, the so-called museum piece that had once been mocked. The wood of its stock was worn smooth, its scope bearing strange etched markings. Next to it, on a simple plaque, were words without attribution. "It's not the weapon that makes the impossible possible." New recruits arrived at the facility on a steady rotation, each handpicked for unique skills and potential. Some brought cutting-edge rifles with advanced optics and digital systems. Others carried well-worn weapons that told stories of countless missions. All of them, however, shared the same initial skepticism. The training here wasn't about the latest tech. It was about intuition, about reading the wind and terrain as if they were living things. That skepticism always crumbled after the first demonstration. One afternoon, a new female recruit stepped onto the range carrying an unusual rifle, a weapon that clearly didn't belong to any standard issue. The other trainees exchanged smirks, their silent judgment as loud as any insult. Kyle Maddox and Jack Rourke, now senior instructors, leaned against the range fence, watching the scene unfold with a knowing sense of déjà vu. Before the murmurs could grow louder, Maddox stepped forward, his tone calm but cutting through the air. "Let's see what you can do," he said simply. From a distance, Morgan Kane observed the interaction. A small, almost imperceptible smile touched her lips. She remembered this moment, her moment, years ago, standing in that very spot with doubters waiting for her to fail. Now the cycle continued. Skill disguised as simplicity, power hidden in plain sight, turning toward the next training field where her class awaited. She let a quiet thought slip through her mind. Sometimes the deadliest weapon isn't the one you see coming. The Ghost program continued to evolve, its operatives surfacing only when the world needed them most, striking with flawless precision before disappearing into the folds of silence. They left no names, no traces, only questions and results so perfect they defied logic. No official records acknowledged their existence. No medals would ever honor their deeds, yet their influence stretched across continents like an invisible hand shaping the battlefield. And sometimes, when elite military snipers gathered late at night to share stories, someone would whisper about a battered old rifle with a worn stock and an outdated scope, how it had delivered an impossible shot that no technology could replicate. Most laughed, dismissing the tale as myth. But a few, those who had learned to see beyond the surface, would fall quiet, knowing the truth. Because legends like Morgan Kane and the ghosts don't need recognition. They move unseen, hidden in plain sight, carrying the kind of respect no award could ever match.